Hi everyone, welcome to another gentle introduction to. So for this one, I'm going to throw my net quite wide. As you can see from the title, I'm going to talk a little bit about exploratory coding and sort of explain what it is and how it might have relevance to something that's currently being referred to as vibe coding. So in this episode, I'm going to be using Python through the Spyder IDE and also Copilot and Ollama, and you'll see where I'm going to go with this, hopefully. But first of all, I'll just do a little bit of, housekeeping, setting my stall out, for want of a better word. So I've been aware of this term vibe coding for a little while now, because I get a lot of what would you call like push alerts, where I'm subscribed to various technology related things. And so I'd seen the term come up here and there in the last few weeks. And on Friday, the Friday before this video is being recorded, I listened to an episode of The Hard Fork, which I listen to every week. It's been a long running podcast now. And I always sort of check on it, well, literally when it comes out on the Friday. And there was a section at the end where they were talking about vibe coding 101. And I think it was Kevin Roos was talking about his experience of practicing a bit of vibe coding. And if you're curious and want a little bit more about vibe coding, then check that episode out, because I'm not specifically going to speak to vibe coding in this episode. This is more about exploratory coding generally, which I think, from my perspective, vibe coding is an offshoot of, is a modern version of, is a side fork, I suppose, of exploratory coding. And you'll see why in a moment if you're not familiar with the term exploratory coding. Now, long-term viewers of the channel probably know I've got this ongoing project called, it's Programming Polyglot. And it's this idea of using AI to help generate training materials to learn, what's the best word I can use this? To learn competence in certain common areas of other languages, if that makes sense. So for instance, it's saying things like, okay, you've got this concept of type inference in languages. What does type inference look like across a broad spectrum of languages? And so I was leveraging AI to help me answer those questions, and then to see how effectively that was happening. And that's what the Programming Polyglot project grew out of. And in the process of doing that, because that was mainly about just dealing with a specific aspect of programming, like, multi-threading, or how languages handle, say, functions and closures, where, the code's fairly short to illustrate the point. You don't need much code to illustrate how type inference works, for instance, or how operators work in a language, to grasp the concepts. But what then obviously happened is I got more interested in, okay, what if I wanted to develop packages to do specific things to solve problems. I nearly said personal problems, but to solve particular coding problems, or to automate processes that I'm interested in, or to find out, or to increase my understanding of certain technologies. So for a while now, I've been wanting to do something with Ollama, and if you're not familiar with Ollama, I'll explain everything in a moment. And so after listening to this episode on Friday, I thought, well, yeah, I'll just have a go at doing, creating a solution to a problem that I have, but doing more of a hybrid approach using exploratory coding with AI as a sort of more of an adjunct, and you'll see I'm going to walk through what I ended up doing, and then we'll try a bit of live exploratory coding and see how that goes. Anyway, let's press on. We've probably had quite a long introduction there. So the tools I'm using for this, and I've mentioned several of these before, for a long time now I've always used Anaconda as my Python environment. You know, I have Python inside of it. I invariably activate RStudio because it gives me access to all the tools that I've wanted in the past when I've been playing around with data science and done various data science courses. So that's a given. Also, part of that package installs Spyder, and this is my go-to Python IDE that I use over Visual Studio Code. Actually, I just much prefer using Spyder. I've used both, but I just gravitated towards this. Also, I've installed Ollama, which allows me to run large language models or open source large language models locally. And at some point in this whole process, which I'm going to go through in a moment, I've acquainted myself with the Ollama API as well. So I'm going to include links to all of this stuff. Now, if you want to sort of break out from that and go off down the whole avenue of, doing your own neural network explorations and stuff to do with artificial intelligence, then invariably you're going to come up against PyTorch or need to use it, and or TensorFlow. And both of those packages I've had to install at some point. PyTorch again today, because I was looking at ways of interacting with LLMs outside of using something like Ollama, if I wanted to do that. And TensorFlow, because they used TensorFlow on this course I did. I don't know when it was, actually. It might have even been 2 years ago now. It's quite a long time ago. So CS50, Introduction to Artificial Intelligence with Python. Obviously, to do this, you need to know Python pretty well. And just looking at Lecture 5, if you're curious, this is what only an implementation, I suppose, to play around with a neural network might look like. And this is the reason why I mentioned TensorFlow is this is using TensorFlow, a TensorFlow library to do that. So at the bare minimum to do what I'm doing, I'm going to talk about in this video, I had to install basically a Python IDE. But like I said, I just installed Anaconda because it has everything else I want in there, including some useful libraries. Installed Ollama, really. And at some point, which I'll talk about in a moment, I read through the Ollama API. The rest of this is just a bonus if you want to break out into other areas. But yeah, I can thoroughly recommend this course. And as far as I know, although I'm not sure because things change over time, but when I did it, you could go all the way through the course, get assessed, get a certificate from Harvard, but you don't get one from edX if you do it that way. If you want to do it for free. I'm assuming that's still the case, but if it's changed, let me know in the comments section. The other thing I did at a point this week, and I'm going to show you through in a moment some of the code I've been working on. But between the 2 days I was doing this over, which would be I suppose a Monday and a Tuesday. I'm trying to think what day it is when I'm recording to that. It's Wednesday, isn't it? Yeah, so Monday, Tuesday. So from one evening to the other, so I did this over 2 evenings, I read a paper in between, a very short paper, on exploring exploratory programming, because I wanted to just establish in my head what I was doing as exploratory programming, or what I thought exploratory programming was in fact exploratory programming. So this is an older paper from 2017. It's available if you go through the author's website here. If you go through this way, through the IE, I think it's behind the paywall, but they've actually got it published on their site as well. And there is a little Wikipedia website if you want to know more, but just read this out. It says exploratory programming as opposed to implementation programming is an important part of the software engineering cycle. When a domain is not very well understood or open-ended, or it's not clear what algorithms and data structures might be needed for an implementation, it's useful to be able to interactively develop and debug a program without having to go through the usual constraints of the edit, compile, run, debug cycle. And it lists a load of languages where that can play out nicely. And so over the year, and it says, which is really interesting here, similarity to breadboarding. So if you're familiar with breadboarding in electronics, it does bear similarities to that. So with breadboarding, you can try various combinations very quickly and just test out a design. And so reading this made me smile and thinking, I've been doing stuff like this for an awful long time. But what's happened now is I've brought AI into the mix. So what I'm doing is I'm using AI to do a lot of the heavy lifting and to save on a little bit of the typing, but I'm still being a bit vague about the what I want it to do, if that's the right word here, because I get the impression with vibe coding you're a bit more specific about the sort of program you want to produce, whereas with exploratory programming there's a bit more of a sort of wiggle to it, where you sort of do a bit and then you think, oh, that's going in an interesting direction, maybe I'll go this way and then this way and then this way. So you may not have a very concrete end goal, but nonetheless you're basically utilizing similar tools, but the way I do it, because it's more exploratory programming, I'm doing it in quite a loose way. It's not what I call tight fit, where you've got your IDE and your AI tools are embedded inside that IDE. I keep my stuff separate, so I can sort of mix and match different LLMs and try different things. Also, just to clarify again, how transparent I like to be about this and what tools I'm using. So basically, the two things I'm using for my messing around with is this thing, which is this model is 10 years. I checked. The model I've got is something like 10 years old now, still going strong. I love these. I rolled out, when I worked for a firm, I rolled out so many of these. I just lost count. And then I've also got one of these, which I use for a lot of my heavy lifting, and I record all my stuff on, sort of day to day. But this is nice at night when I'm sort of upstairs sitting there with my wife and Mav, and just hanging out, maybe watching some movies or having a chat, and I just want a laptop there to sort of dabble around in the background, so I use this. And then when I'm recording videos or sort of doing serious work, I suppose, and I'm down in my office, then this is what I fire up. And just to be clear on the specifications here, let me bring this across. So yeah, that's the Elite book. So I think when the Elite book series existed in 4 flavors of processor, I'm pretty sure this was the fastest of them at the time. I don't know if there was one above this or not. It's got, when these shipped, they shipped with 8 gig of RAM. When we used to get them in, we stuck in another 8 gig, basically. My Pro Desk, which is what this is, 600 G4, it has a better processor in it, I'm not quite sure how old these are now, actually. They're definitely more than, well over 5-6 years, maybe 7, I'm not sure. This is, again, 16 gig of RAM. These I can't remember when we bought them, because this is an work model. I left my company under excellent terms and got lots of nice things when I left that they said I could take with me, and my ProDesk was one of them. And I'm trying to remember when I rolled these out in combination with one of my colleagues, what we ended up doing with them, whether they came from HP with the 16 gig in them, or they were 8 and then we added. I'm not sure. I'd have to open it up at some point. This thing is capable of holding 64 gig of RAM. This thing is maxed out. That's the maximum you can do. But my point is, with that setup, I'm able to run some large language models under Ollama. And we'll talk about that in a moment. But I just wanted to sort of give you a bit of background here, because I know people sort of dive in and aren't really, I wouldn't say they're dishonest, but it's nice to be transparent about your setup so people know what's achievable with certain setups. But that's basically what I'm using. I'll probably put that in the description, because there's no sort of personal details in there, so I'll sort of do that, I think. So let's just have a look here. So I'm going to walk through, first of all, what I worked on over the last couple of days, and give you some sort of rough idea about like how long it took me. I wasn't on a clock with this, so I was being a little bit durdly and very exploratory. But first of all, I just show you what I'm now running as my sort of available LLMs. So this is the list of Ollama. Ollama is currently running in the background on my machine, and it's set to when, if the machine restarts for any reason, Ollama just gets fired up. So this is what's available to Ollama in terms of LLMs. You can see they're all relatively small. This one's tiny. And where's the other one? I thought there was a... No, I don't think I put it on yet. There was another one I wanted to experiment with, and maybe I might even do that now. Let me just reload this off screen, and I will just do that. There's one I wanted to take a look at, which I installed on the laptop upstairs. So it's this one. So on the other line here, I'm just running this from a admin command prompt. So Ollama list, or Ollama LS, lists what's available. Ollama PS lists what's currently running. Well, nothing's running. I haven't served up any large language models to onto Ollama. So this is what it looks like if you need to install something. So you can see Ollama run and then the name of the model. I got the name from the Ollama website. So when you go into the Ollama website, just to switch back to there quickly, and you access a model, so you wanted Mistral, you can get the command line from here, basically. Okay. So I went in and I was specifically after this one called Pythia, which I'm not going to be using in this episode, but I just wanted it. And I'd gone on, and it has useful links on here as well, so I needed to check out the GitHub entry to make sure it was the right one that I was after as well. So yeah, so let's just install that. So now this setup matches my setup upstairs. Now, of course, I could do some clever things with Docker here as well. I mean, that would probably be the smart thing to do. But, I'm not always smart. So we're just going to pull the manifest down. It's a pretty small model, this. So now it actually dumps me into the system. And if I wanted to send a message and get a response back, I could to that particular. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to go out of here because the purpose of this is we're going to be in a moment interacting with, Ollama through Python to access the LLM. So if I go back up now, so you can see it's been added to the list, and where was it? So there's my list. Still not. So this is the important thing. So because I've gone in run it, it's actually loaded it, so it's going to be there. If I wanted to just unload it from there, what I can do is I can do it from the command line here. So if I just do Ollama, see what there is, and you can see here we got stop. So let's just see. It's funny, I've been running so many of these. So I've got to tell it what model I want to stop. Not surprisingly, because I could be running multiple models here. Now with some of these, what you'll notice is you'll see at the end of them, they have latest in there. If they've got that, then just referencing by the first bit here should stop it. But we're going to just do this one. There we go. So let's just see. Yeah, so you can see it's not running now. So pretty straightforward. And I don't think I'm going to need to use that for the moment, but we can always bring it up again. So what happened was 2 days ago I started to work through, and I did this really simple prompt, and I wasn't really keeping tabs on the prompt. I was more interested in the code that came out of it. So I did it in a completely anonymous session. I wanted to sort of completely isolate it, see how far I could go by not logging into Copilot at all. And not surprisingly, I'm finding this a lot with Copilot. Actually, it locked up several times. It's doing that even when I log in, actually. So just be warned. It is worth logging in if you do want to keep your stuff, because if it locks up when you're not logged in, you're going to lose all your history, because as soon as you restart in a non-logged on session, generally you'll lose all your history. But I wasn't too worried about, keeping what prompts I'd done, because I was going to repeat it. It was really like a first pass through. But I've kept all the various sort of versions I did, all the stop gaps as I went along, and I'm going to sort of talk through what's going on here. So to start with, I basically just asked it to create a program which would allow me to send a request to a local instance of Ollama through the Ollama API, and would come back with an answer, or as it calls it here, as a prediction. And this pretty much straight away is what it came up with. And if I run this, so it's basically gonna so what it'll do is, although I'm not running currently, maybe I'll bring this up again just to show you. It's not going to interfere with anything else there. Although actually I'll bring it back in, because it's not going to float when I start running this. It'll disappear again. And I could modify Spyder to actually there's a modification you can do to Spyder to run a regular console in here as well, rather than the IPython console. But I didn't want to mess up my copy of Spyder before I did this, just in case. So that's why I'm doing this a bit haphazardly. So I'm just going to run this, and what it's going to do is it's going to push out this prediction. Just to clarify here, I've also had to install this Ollama library, which I did on my system, because I'm running out of Conda. It'll be Conda install. I'm not going to rerun this, and then Ollama. Okay, and that's installing the Llama library in Python. because you need it to run various functions here, one of which is this thing called chat. So let's just run this. And it'll be a little while. While it's doing that, we'll just talk through it. This isn't going to be super fast. It was never intended to be. And if I want it to be fast, I'm going to have to build a bigger machine. So, yeah, I do realise that. And all it's really doing here is I've got my defined a, or what should I say? Copilot helped me create a function called predict_skill, which takes a prompt, some sort of prompt, which in this case is going to be a string. And it firstly prints generating completion from the model. I think I actually I put that in. I don't think it had that. And then the response is returned from this chat function, where I'm feeding it the name of the model. So I've hard coded that in, and there's a number of messages that I need to say. So we've got role is user, content is prompt here, and we're going to return back this this value, which comes back with the just to back up here, because I haven't explained what's going on. So we're sending a request to the Ollama, which is running, has now started running this model, and it's going to return to us a JSON file. So we want to grab and return a particular part of that JSON response. Did I say JSON file? Well, yeah, but we're getting a JSON response from there. And this comes back all in one hit. It's not a stream, which you can do with these. It's just a single hit. So we get everything like comes back, boom, and which is all of this. So what I'm then doing is there's the function that does that, and then I'm basically evoking the function. So I'm evoking predict skill with the prompt being what is DeepSeek, and then getting back the prediction that comes back, that's returned from this function. So message content is the tags that it's grabbed in the function from the JSON response that's come back. I'm probably not describing this great because it's quite difficult to do on the fly here, but certainly to do this, it does really help to have an understanding of JSON, and we'll come on to why in a moment. So that was great. So I then decided to get a bit fancy. I thought, well, what I really want to do is in Python do the equivalent of that command I showed you, which is the list, version list. There must be something in the Ollama API that does that, and indeed there is. But I was curious as to whether I could get Copilot to work that out. So I asked it to do exactly that. I asked it to come up with a function that would get a list of the available models. So we're going to run this, and it should fail at some point. So what you can see happened is, and we've got a little bit of debug code here, print models. So this gives you a better idea now of me trying to explain it without anything on the screen. This sort of gives you a better idea of the sort of thing that gets returned when you do, when you do a request to the API, do a GET request. So here we go. It's this bit here. So why are we getting this error message? Well, when it came up with the code, it decided, based on its own determination, that it was looking for this particular tag within JSON to like pull out those sections. So what it's doing is it's wanting to try and grab model somewhere, but it's got the tag wrong. It assumed that it was called ID. So what I actually did was I then fed it the from the API description on the Ollama GitHub page. I fed it what the curl a request looked like for this, okay, and then I told it what came back, and it was able to then correctly work out. So now this is a slightly expanded version. So after I did that, in the same breath I said, oh, and can you sort of join all this together? So we're starting to get a much more complicated response here. So now what it's doing is the function to send a request here. There's a lot more information here. I'm getting it to restate what model it's using. We've got generating completion from the model, the display message. I've also introduced a timer inside of Python, because I wanted to see from the point at which just before I send the response to when the full response is returned, because we're not doing a streamed response, we're doing a single sort of dump, but it's going to take its time to do that. You can in the API do a stream response, but I didn't want to do that. I just wanted to sort of wait and then it to dump out the response, and it work out the elapsed time as well. And then I get this response message and content. So here's this list of available models, and you can see it's slightly simpler because I've taken out certain aspects of the debug code. We just have a function here, response equals list, and the command is literally using Ollama. So again, don't forget I'm using the library here to do this. It's just listing that library, and it just will list the models. You can see I've also got it to add in some extra code to check to make sure Ollama is actually running, and it's using so I've got a function here to check if Ollama running with a try, and then to see what sort of response code I get back, and it gets used accordingly. So when I get down to main, so I've got my is Ollama running function, I've got my get available models function, I've got my predict skill function, which takes the model that I want to use and the prompt. So somewhere here in the main thing, I have it actually checking to see if Ollama is running and then printing an appropriate response if it's not. And then I'm getting my available models. I'm printing the list of available models by enumerating through them. And then, enumerating through the part of the JSON response that had the models in it. So because I now correctly in here found that right. So it was models, not ID. And you can see in here, look, you can see where that data is being pulled from in this list of here. It's a bit, there you go. See that there. So it's one of the useful things of having, debug code. That's why I love working in Python. Just using a simple print to basically print out the contents of a particular variable or a return from a function. And so where are we? Down here. Select a model. So I wanted to be able to select a model by number. So I put a list up, and then you enter your prompt in, and do you want to make another request? So I've now got it looping round and round and round. So now, if we run this, let me just get out of the way there. Boom. So we're now on this sort of first. So this is my first serious result of this is what I was actually after. So I really wanted, okay, show me the models. Select a model. So supposing I wanted to choose Mistral, say, should I do that? No, actually Gemma 2. So we just do put in 4. Now at this point, I'm not going to do it, but you'll notice there isn't a ton of what would you call it, like code to catch errors. So I'm going to be very careful at this point about what I put in, and being very, I'll show you in a moment, the code got refined to catch user error. Okay, so enter your prompt. So what can I put in? So let's keep it consistent here. So what is DeepSeek? Okay, so because now we haven't got the prompt's not hard coded in here. So the way the process is working, just so you're clear with this, is I'm asking, in this case, Copilot to do solve a particular problem for me, but just a bit of it. It's coming back with code, and then I'm representing the code to it and saying, oh, I'd like you to fix this, or I'd like this to be differently, or looks like this is wrong. Here's, what I'm asking it for. Here's the response I get. How should the code be tweaked? And so that's what it's doing. So it's more of this sort of interactive thing going on. So I'm sort of using AI to help me explore for this solution, rather than doing it all inside of a single IDE with the AI, the LLM shrink wrapped in. Now you can see this is getting a bit meta. You can see where I was going with this, because what I wanted to start doing is ultimately using this local instance of the LLMs, albeit a lot smaller than is available on when I run, Copilot through the Microsoft website, to dabble around with things like this, but lots of different models. But I'm keeping it fairly simple. So you can see here we've got a much more involved answer with what did I pick? That's what I wanted to prompt about. Yeah, Gemma 2, latest. Okay, so that's cool. So we've got that working. Let me just grab this so I don't have to keep retyping it. Okay, so that was cool. And of course, it's just the nature of the large language model and how it behaves as to how much information or not you're going to get back. Do you want to make another request? Yes or no? If I say no, it's going to dump me out. Pretty straightforward. So then we get on to version 2. So now we're starting to get a little bit more complicated about how we deal with certain errors. So I was already, starting to do things like, okay, yeah, great, the code's working. How can we clean this up a little bit? You can see I've removed some of the libraries, and I'll explain why in a moment. Now you'll notice, okay, what have I done with Ollama? So this is where I decided, and partially why there's much more test coding here. I wanted to create something that didn't rely on the Ollama library, which is why at a point in the proceedings I needed to read this document, which is the API endpoint document, to talk to Ollama directly without going through the Ollama library for Python. So I used information from this to then inform the sort of questions I was asking it, or the sort of prompts I was doing. So now so it named all of these. So I've got custom lists, so it's going to create a function to get a list of models, but it's not going to use the Ollama library, it's going to use, it does need to use requests. So it's using this particular library here. I suspect I haven't pulled it apart, but if you, this actually has requests in it as well, because probably, from the stuff I'm doing, it needs that library in order to do other stuff. Let me just, I'm not 100% sure, because I would expect the library itself to be included inside of the Ollama library, but there was a reason why. Oh, I know why. Because of this, okay, because it was put in because I need to check if Ollama's running. Okay, it's always fun when you try and go back and explain what you did when you don't necessarily put a ton of comments in there. Okay, you can see the comments getting filled out a lot more now. So custom function to send a request to Ollama. So this is the chat request now. So that's what it looked like before using the Ollama library. This is what it looks like now, where I'm, actually sort of creating the payload myself and, building up the get. You can see here, building up the URL. Okay, having to be a bit more specific about certain things. What do I want back? JSON payload, that sort of stuff. So it's building that out for me. Here I've got base URL defined there, which is where I've got to point the request to get the responses back. Also here's the function to check if Ollama is running. Function to get a list of available models, which is actually pretty straightforward. Function to send a request to Ollama, which is so this is so here we have the custom chat. So this is replacing, where's it gone? This is replacing this here. So there's my predict skill. So I've had to write my own chat, had to write my own list stuff, and then these are being used in turn inside the original. So what I've done effectively is I've replaced the functions that were called using the Ollama library with my own functions, which, well, I say my own, they've been created by by Copilot. And we got function to send a request to Ollama, blah blah blah, and then the main loop, which really hasn't really changed that much, because I'm doing most of the heavy lifting in the functions. So I'm not going to rerun any of this yet. So then I start to ask it to just, tweak and tweeze things. And I don't know if you can see that. I don't know how easy that is to spot. But it's a tiny bit shorter. So I've sort of optimized it a little bit. You'll also notice this got added in. It advised me to do something like this. This is actually wrong. It gets corrected in a way. It doesn't matter, because what it's doing here is it's checking to see if this environment value exists. If it does, that gets returned. If not, then this gets returned. I thought it was just a nice touch there. It's tightened up a few, I think, of the print commands here and there a little bit, but nothing too major. But just generally tightened things up, made a few things a little bit more efficient. Looks like it might have removed a little bit of what's the word? Refactored some of the error checking. So version 3. So when we get to version 4, now I just want to check. So okay. So I'm on a side screen. Yeah, so version 4. So at this point, I asked it to start documenting the program, Just said, can you document everything? So it starts documenting the functions. So, saying what the function does, what it returns. If it's got arguments, then, what's in the arguments, what it returns, and so on. You can see it's done that for each of the functions. So again, I got Copilot to do that. I just said, here's the code, document it for me. Now, in the course of doing that, it also removed, interestingly enough, or at some point, maybe it happened earlier, it started to remove a lot of the comments anyway, because it started to become obvious as to what the components were doing. As, functions were getting built out, code was getting, it seemed to just naturally do that. I didn't ask it to do that. So it started removing the comments. But I'd obviously asked it to put in documentation. So here is, the documentation section for the functions, including a bit it did here for main as well. So at that point, I sort of stopped. And that, I'm looking at the timestamps here. So the Ollama UI one, I've got a timestamp of 6:30 on the 24th of February. You can't see what I'm sort of like, this is a side panel I've got open. Just showing me the individual files. So that was 6:30 p.m. on the 24th. This one got done on at 9:30 on the 24th. So yeah, it was 9:20. So it was over the course of about 3 hours. And probably what happened is the first hour went very fast, and I probably got far in, and then the last 2 hours was spent like messing around a bit, experimenting. So like I said, I wasn't against the clock or anything, so probably could have done this a bit tighter, certainly. But I was, again, this is the advantage for me of taking more of an exploratory view, is I'm not letting the process get away with itself. So I actually don't understand the code. I'm using it as a training method to say, okay, I've asked it to do this. What did it actually do here? So I really understand what's going on. So then we get on to the following day. And so this one was about 8:30 the following day. This is in the evening. And then with this stuff, I finished up. Wow. I did one final tweak today, actually. So from what I remember, I was doing this from about 8:30 till just after 10. So not quite as long. So hour and a half, 2 hours of playing around with the next few iterations. So let's just look at that, see if we can get a rough idea. What's that, 121 lines of code. It's not a very accurate way of doing it, but gives you some idea. Slightly longer. So what happened was I wanted to start cleaning a few things up and just refining a few things. I got it to add some comments, basically, which I then sort of indented a little bit to make them a bit clearer, just so I knew so it was easy for me to see exactly where some of the stuff was happening. And some of this got removed out later, but I just sort of tweaked a couple of things here and there. Tweaked this so it was correct, because you remember I said this was actually wrong. Found out if it existed, which it does. When I checked, it did. I don't think it does, even though it says if you actually interrogate the model, and I'm trying to remember the command to do that. So if I go into here and do, where is it? I want to refresh my memory here. Show information. Pull list. One of these does actually say, I'm trying to remember now. Anyway, it doesn't matter too much, but one of the commands as in doing it, actually shows that environment value, what it's supposed to be. So when I saw that, I grabbed it. The one it saves at that environment value actually says that, was it 127.0.0.1, I think, but I prefer to use localhost just for reasons. So same functions, nothing too new there, just like tweaking a little bit, like a lot of us do. When we go back a day later and think, oh yeah, I want to just add this in. And in fact, what happened was down here, we started to get a little bit more selective. So if I run it now, so this probably is quite a good opportunity to just see a few, if there are indeed any cosmetic changes. Yeah, so you can see we've got the option to enter 0 to exit now. If I select a model, I'm trying to see if I change the order slightly at this point. So if I do, let's do Gemma again, and I suspect, let me just, I better not just paste because I don't know what's in the I don't know what's in the what do you call it, on the spike. As used to refer to it. Sorry, it's been a long day. So again, it just reminds me. Okay, this is actually the model. So just a double check to make sure. Yeah, that's actually the one I did select. And I think at this point, I hadn't gone on to doing the clever bit, or the bit I thought was well, not so much clever, but a feature I wanted to have in it. So in a moment you'll see when we move on to version 6, I can't remember if it comes in version 6 or version 7. Things start to get interesting. So I was just really cleaning a few things up in here, mainly manually, but then just every so often, when I did it, just going back and saying, oh, is there any additional advice you can give me on ways I could improve this? And it did. There were some sort of changes it made to this, quite sort of considerable changes, which I decided to dial back. While that's just running, we'll look at version 6. So so here I wanted to make this a little bit fancier. And also at some point, let me see if this has actually got a lot. You can see this has got a lot longer, and that's because I started to get it to sort of subdivide out functions, so make the functions a little bit smaller. Because I wanted to see this version here. I wanted to get rid of anything that said latest on here. So here's the answer here. So now I start to think, okay, how can I improve this? I've already got this in here to do 0, but I wanted to start adding some other features in here, and so I wanted to add a feature where if I just pressed enter, it would reuse a previous prompt. So let's just run this, see what this looks like now. So you can see here, and again I'm looking at it going, okay, I want to change this and that, and maybe if it's a simple change, I was doing it myself, like I wanted to just reword something, but if there's several lines I wanted to change, rather than me sort of typing out stuff like this, I just said, okay, can you display the table for the list of models a little bit better? And it came up with this. And then I tweaked it slightly, like I took off a couple of these here so it lined up better here. in the code. So again, just tweaking little bits here and there. So sometimes I'll get the codes that get Copilot to do it. Sometimes it's just quicker to do it myself. So now I can select a model. So now we've got logic in here. So I can do things like this. So if I do 56, yeah, invalid model, please try again. If I do 0, it exits. Pretty straightforward. So this time we'll just go into Mistral. So again, enter your prompt. Now, there was an additional piece of functionality in here, which isn't at the moment. It's not prompt, so it's like a hidden feature. So if I do this, just enter, it's going to try and see if there's been a previous prompt, but there hasn't, because I've just run this program. So I've got to enter a prompt in there. What is DeepSeek? Oh, away goes. Now the idea, and say it's using model mistral. The idea behind this is, supposing now when I run it the second time, I want to keep the same prompt but change the model. That's basically what I would do. So I'd select the model, at the enter the prompt, just press enter, and it's going to pull in what is DeepSeek again. So I don't have to copy paste anything. So I thought it was just a nice little tweak. Now the first time I tried to do this, it actually made a mistake and forgot to generate the code to capture the previous prompt, and so there was an error there, and I corrected it and told it, oh yeah, no, you've got it wrong. So just to show you this in action, if I now do select a model by numbers 5 this time round, I think it's a different, what did I do before? Mistral, yeah. Okay. Enter your prompt, enter, reusing previous prompt. So that's the, if you like, the hidden feature in there that I know about. Okay, so at some point I wanted to start experimenting with capturing these, and I could have gone through and literally sort of added in something to save to a file. So maybe create a file with this name, but I let Copilot handle it. I said, okay, why don't you suggest to me ways I can improve this code, and also I want to be able to save the queries, the stuff I get back, so the stuff I'm putting in and the stuff I get back for future use, so I can look through it. And it suggested using log files to do that. But what had happened was, when I tried to implement it with the code that it suggested, it didn't work as expected. So I said to it, look, it's not working. And it suggested I create a logtest.py file to try the feature out, just to make sure that it worked okay. So I did that, and at that point, version 6 became version 7 when I added it in. But then what I did today is I decided, the day before, I wanted to just have go to bed, basically, because it was getting a bit late, when it was going to be too late. But I just wanted to knock it on the head and go upstairs and hang out with Mav a bit, and because you've got to hang out with the kitty. And so I did the changes for version 7. So I introduced the configure logging bit. So this is where you activate logging. So then at a strategic point in here, you can, there you go, log the information that I wanted. So we've got the model that's being used, the prompts, the time taken. And what it does is, when it logs this information, it also captures the time and date for that entry as well. So that the point at which it puts in the log file. You'll see in a moment how that works. And it's just called predictions.log. And the following day, what I did, the morning of this video going out, is I just went through and made a few other sort of cosmetic little tweaks here and there, nothing too major. So I just wanted to just make sure that I'd not forgotten anything, when I wrapped up things the night before. Just double checked a few things up here, got it to print the base URL, which is currently doing. So I just put in a little bit of, like debug code, whatever you want to call it, just to see what it was grabbing, which I wanted to use in a future thing, just to see if I could successfully populate this environment value and get it to grab it, just as an experiment. So that's there, sort of there, ready to go. But you'll see in a moment when I run it what happens. So let me just kill the last section, and then we will run this. So you can see it's just confirming that that's actually the base URL. We knew that was working already, otherwise the thing would have crashed. This looks the same, so we're going to select the model, enter your prompt. Okay, again, if I do that. So there's no clue here to necessarily to that functionality. It's just, it's just there. I know it's there. You now know it's there. At some point I'm going to put this up on my GitHub, but not yet. Where are we? Paste. So just doing me a hecking think, because it amused me. So I think I added that in. It was just one or two very quick tweaks the following morning. I could do something clever with the streaming stuff as well, so I could actually have something clever going on, probably with the like dotted lines just showing it is actually doing something. But this is good enough for me at the moment. And in a moment, I've got to just check it. So what's actually going to happen? Just off screen, I'm just going to clear out my predictions log before it saves to it. Hopefully my timing was okay on that. So I don't think... we got some... so this is blank, ready to go. Because we're going to try something out in a moment. Okay, so here's the result again, back to the screen, but I now have a predictions log which looks something like this. So you can see here, here's the logging system actually puts this in itself. So this is the date that it was put in the log. And then I've slightly tweaked something else I did. At some point I slightly tweaked his original suggestion, so it sort of laid out the values that get logged in a slightly line by line instead of one big sort of dense bit of text initially. So we've got the model number used, what the prompt is, the time taken. Now I'm doing this, I notice now it's in, we've got this in seconds, 74.38 seconds, interestingly enough. Now, I'm just going to come back to that because I did make a change here. I wonder if it decided to... Yeah, okay. Total time taken, minutes and seconds. I think I probably need to fix something here because I modified this. Oh, yeah, so, no, that's okay. This is just, so for this, it's done in seconds. There is a slight discrepancy between what's printed on the screen, I suppose, and what it actually reports here. So here I've got it all in seconds, so 74 seconds. For screen purposes, I decided to break it down. Yeah, that was another change I made, but I hadn't made the change in the logging info actually, which I can do just by putting this into here if I feel so inclined. I'll do that when I'm not recording, just in case I mess things up. But yeah, that would be another change I'd want to make. Thinking about that, just to make sure everything's the same. So you can see there's the prediction, and then I've also added a couple of spaces to the end of this. So when the next thing gets logged, it just comes in after that. So if I was to run this again with a different model, so for that one, see, it was on the screen a moment ago and I can't even remember what it said, Gemma 2. So if I select a different model, let's do Mistral, so do 7, enter your prompt, just press enter and it should repeat, that. It's doing a hecking think. And in a moment comes back with the answer, but I'll show you the prediction log and how it changes it. So while that's doing that, let's get set up here and we'll do a little bit of actual coding using this. So let me just clear this. So Mav very kindly let me borrow his okay. Very kindly let me borrow his account so I don't cross contaminate my own stuff. He's been very helpful with these. Okay, so it seems to have added an extra layer of security there on his account. Okay, how can I help? Right, here we go. So, should we just do the same thing again and just see where this goes so I sort of know what I'm aiming for? I mean, it's a bit of a cheat. Oh, before I do that, sorry. Yeah, so there's the next one, and it will just keep adding to this prediction file on and on and on, so I get a record of every single thing I've done unless I go in and delete the prediction log, basically. So, and then it will create a new one and carry on where it left off, so on. So again, if I put in something stupid like that, if I do 0, boom, and I'm thinking about in a tweet where if I press enter, it actually just reuses the previous model that I've selected as well. So I can sort of reuse the same model and doing it. So I've got both sort of things covered there. Okay. Okay, so how would I tackle this a second time? Well, what I normally do with this is I do a little pre-prep. So we're, just so you know, we're running a completely fresh thing here. Oops. Just delete that. So we don't want anything contaminating this. And I could, you probably saw there, I could ask it about, as a preparation, I could ask it about vibe coding if I wanted to. So I could say, what is the difference between vibe coding and exploratory? Did I say vibe? I meant vibe. Vibe coding and exploratory programming. Yeah, so I suppose I'm sort of doing a hybrid approach where I'm using AI here. So yeah, AI driven exploratory programming, a bit more, it's sort of more hands-on, but I am using elements of what's up here. So it's sort of a hybrid. Yeah. So what would a hybrid look like? Yeah. And of course, at some point, I'd probably want to ask it, oh, can you write some test scripts for this as well, which would be super useful. After all that, if you're curious, just we've been playing around here. So one thing you might want to ask yourself is, in the background here, like what's running? So what it'll do is it will just simply be running the last language model that I requested from it. So if I was to rerun that code and say request a different one, it sort of swaps them out. So just so you know, in there. So you can run multiple ones side by side in here in Ollama, but the way it's configured here is I'm not doing that. I'm just running one. Now, going forward, there may be instances where I might want to play around with sort of hybrid approaches. This is the whole point of doing this. Like, why did I want to do this in the first place? Well, I wanted to create my own interface in Python so that I could do additional stuff with the response and play around with, you know, sending a response back into another model or back into the same model or whatever. So, and see where that took me. Particularly useful for music discovery stuff I wanted to play around with, actually. I was hoping that. So that's really and that's why I wanted more of a command line thing and not have to do like create, say, a front end or web interface. At this point, I'm sort of more interested in the sort of ins and outs of the tool. And to be honest with you, from that perspective, I probably could have kept it like this, but I wanted a little bit more of a friendly interface while I was sort of playing around with the concepts. And obviously I wanted a better set of functions, which I would probably have been too lazy to put together. So that's the other thing, is it actually does compensate for my laziness sometimes, and actually cleans my code up quite well. So there is that. So we're going to have this thing called chat prediction. I don't know how long this video is going to... I've shown you the process. I probably won't run this totally to the end, but I thought it'd be interesting to see some of the starting steps here to sort of whet your appetite. What have I just done there? Sorry, I'm just got to get the right one up here. Okay, so what should I do? Yeah, let's do this from cold. So let's delete our conversations completely, just in case we get any overspill. So nothing here. Yeah, it's just some of my stuff has got stuff from the programming polyglot stuff that I don't necessarily want to cross-contaminate it with. I'm sure it won't if I start up a new chat, but I'd rather do it this way. And yeah, Mav's quite happy for me to delete all his chats because, you know, he's a cat and, yeah, he's probably just quite frivolous. I did have some nice pictures. Someone was asking me about Mav the other day here, so this is him at work. Yeah, so he's helping me here with another project I was doing. Very, very helpful cat. And this is the incident where he stole my Banky, which I've mentioned about on a post before. And yeah, now he has possession of said Banky. And yeah, today, no doubt he was up to lots of shenanigans while I was downstairs. He wasn't hanging around in the office today. Oh, this is his arch nemesis. This is Mini Mav, and this is Sharky Ball. Oh, there he is again. That's, yeah. Well, I think he spent a lot of today. He's having a day off, so at some point I'll get him to put a Copilot may make mistakes. I'll get him to put in an appearance. Okay, so let's just set this rolling so you can sort of see how this might work. So what I want to do is, can you help? I'm going to be polite. Can you help me create a Python application that would allow me to let's just do this, interact, can't spell now, interact, that's good enough, with a local instance of Ollama running some, dear me, this is why I like large language models. It helps with my typos in coding. Okay, so what have we got? So this is okay. So this is how it's doing. It's pretty similar to. So let's just go with it. Yeah. By the way, of course, I think I mentioned I already had to install. I'm using Anaconda, so I have to be really careful to remember to do conda install, so I don't mess up the integrations between the components. So just a word of warning there. So already we can see we're going to run it anyway. We've got some mistakes here, and where's my okay, let's just run it. Yeah, okay, so we already know that this is wrong. We know this is wrong, and we could find that out from various ways. Now, did I close? It's all right, I'm messing up here a bit. I think I'm going to move this off to the side so it doesn't keep flashing up. But one thing at this point, so definitely fairly early on, I had to help out here. So I'm going to just try something. I don't think I tried this yesterday. I started showing it sort of examples of JSON responses and various other things. So let's just see if it'll work. So can you tell me about this document, and will it help refine the code you provided? So you can see I'm using this in a bit more of a interactive way. There is something to be said about maybe using this more like you would do a product specification, I suppose. Okay, so it's not really doing much there. Okay, so let's just give it some more info. Okay, let me show you an example of a request. Actually, I did this. If I show you an example of a curl request and a JSON response, will that help you? So I'm doing this really gradually. Yeah. Okay, so there's the curl. So these I'm grabbing from the actual document. I was hopeful there. I mean, yeah, I didn't think it was probably going to read the thing. Okay, so I don't know if you can see what it's done here. So it's starting to tweak the code. And what I might well do here is, once we get a fairly successful response, so I'm not going to keep these different versions. Okay, make sure I save it in case it pulls the wrong one. thinking, because we don't have the benefit here of certain things. Now, I didn't check to see if it's gone from for a... Yeah, what's interesting here is, well, did you notice it's not trying to use... I didn't tell it anything actually about the Ollama library, so that's interesting. But then how would it necessarily know? So yeah, it's different. So you can see, look, it's done the base URL thing. Okay, what do we got here? It's not happy. Target machine actively refused it. Okay. Well, let's do, I'm going to do as minimal, so it looks like it's having problems with this. Okay, send query, model name prompt, send query. I could cross compare this, but let's see if we can just do it using this. So we're supplying the model name. Oh, okay, that's why, because there is no model 3.2. That's why. Okay, because yeah, it's just pulled this out. Right, now I know. It's all right, me being dumb. What models have we got access to without going? So if I just get it to Ollama, I'm assuming, yeah, that wasn't just the only reason why the other one failed, because there was actually something genuinely wrong with the local host, but I should have picked that up there. Well, it actually didn't say the model name anyway, so I knew that first one was going to fail, I suppose. So, yeah. Okay, here's we got access to. Oh no, it is. We do have 3.2, sorry. Okay, so it's not that. Oh, I thought it was going to be something really obvious. Oh, we didn't have access to 3.2. Max reach time is exceeded with the URL. Have I got the base right there? I'll tell you what we'll do, what I normally do, is we'll just feed it the error and see what happens. So I'm acting a bit dumb here. I'm not gonna... Let's just feed it the whole... I've normally found if I just do this without any explanation and just go, here's the error. Don't even say that, just go, boom, straight back in. So I think, yeah, because it doesn't know. So it is, streaming is off though, I believe. Did it make a mistake? No, it hasn't switched streaming off. That's the problem. Even, yeah. Look, I'm pretty sure. Well, let's just take its word on it. Okay. Let's just do this. Save it. Run it. That should fail if I'm right. If not, it's done something somewhere else. Because you can see the payload here is not correct for what we're trying to do. If we don't put streaming to false, it's basically gonna keep it's going to keep streaming stuff out. So I think that's how it's going to handle that. And if I can show you, response from the server, right? Yeah, this is what the curl request looks like. Yeah, so you can see similarities in here, and this is the bit we're missing. So I'm gonna actually let's do it. Let's do it this way, how I would normally do it. So rather than just correct it, let's try. I think you'll find that it needs stream false in the payload. Say something like that. Ta-da. Now, of course, unless you'd read the API document, you know, and you were flying blind. Oh wow! Hang on, has it just done it? Did I go too quickly? Let's try that again. I think I jumped the gun there. Seems to have condensed my code down a bit. So with this, yeah, it's incredibly crude. So basically, if I want to sort of change the model and change the prompt, I've got to do it manually in here. There's no pre-check like on the other one. That's why that's running, just to show you. We've all got all sorts of things in here to at some point, you know, we check to see, okay, is Ollama even running? Which it's doing to some degree here on its own. There you go, see? So we now have a working version of this with relatively few prompts there. I mean, if we just recap this, just to see what I actually asked it. So, yeah, can you help me with this? So it just did this rough thing. I didn't tell anything else. It decided to go and use, you know, just create its own stuff out. When I did mine originally, I probably did mention that there was an Ollama like Python library, which is a way just initially to get things off the ground. Also, that meant that my first solution was pretty succinct because so much was being handled by the Ollama Python library. But yeah, so it's, you know, just very loosey-goosey about these values. It's assuming that it's going to be, you know, that support number on the local host. That was correct, actually. So some of the things here it you know, got right. That I don't think was so correct. And you know, so then I started, okay, you know, and this is the step I could have probably missed out. So I just said, okay, here's the Ollama GitHub API document. Is there anything you can glean from that? I didn't know how successful I was going to be. Just made a rough guesstimate, I suppose, about how to use it. So really didn't change that much, if anything. I think it tweaked this. I'll see, yeah, look. So here, interestingly enough, it did make a change. Okay, so it's decided about, oh, yeah, so here we go. Curiouser and curiouser. Yeah, so, okay, I'm going to give you an example now of it. Oh, That's why I didn't give it the haha. There we go. That was my own fault. So it just shows you got to be careful here. Yeah, so that's why. Read what you're posting. Yeah, so that was my fault. So that's why you have to be so careful. And yeah, that raises an important point, is that the code that it's created hasn't been designed, the main section, and if you like the functions, to correctly deal with a response that is a streaming response. So yes, under certain circumstances it could have dealt with this, but not the way the code's structured. So it's easiest just to say, okay, well, you need to add this so it's a non-streaming response, and then that'll fix it. So I did give it some error messages which it didn't really cotton on to, and then I think even if there's a stream false, yep, and it got it right. So part of that was obviously me not paying attention. Which I'll fully admit to, but in some ways that's the fun of this. That's how you learn to pay attention, which is a problem of mine at the moment, sadly. And so yeah, so make sure you read the API document correctly, I think, is the lesson here. And so we do have a version here, but it's not not as nice as this. But we can go in and just modify this. But we're going to run into problems like if we do wacky stuff like this, something. Oh, there, and then try and run it. Yeah, failed to get a response from the LLM. So that comes back pretty quick. Now, obviously how I did it in mine is obviously I locked down the choices by you having to make a choice from a list. There may well be other ways you can do that. Maybe if you left it open, it would just say, it would check for this error and say, oh, you failed to get a response from that LLM because it doesn't exist, and do it that way. So it wouldn't be probably as elegant, but you could put in some code here that tests for this, or create a function that tests for this sort of response. And if you get that response, then put a prompt up saying, I think the name of your LLM is incorrect. You might have to catch for other things as well. I'll show you what happens if we, just so you know, let me just get in here and stop this fella from running. So we're not running Llama now. Turn that back to what it was. Uh-oh. It was, see, I can't even remember, was it Llama 3 point something, wasn't it? I believe. I've got it here. So I've got all my models listed in a document, so to make it a bit easier when I'm trying to synchronize everything up. There we go. Let's try running that now. Save it. Run it. Yeah, so not as elegant. If I do it on this one, let's compare and contrast, he says. Yeah. Llama is not running. Please start the Llama server and try again. So we're not really, there's not enough going on here to catch all, catch this instance, but on this one. And I think on my original one, that came in, was it around this version? Maybe, probably not. Yeah, it did. So fairly early on, I had that built in. Yeah. But yeah, if I use the very first, it's same. Yeah. In fact, this one actually failed a little bit more gracefully than this one, but probably because I was using, yeah, so there I'm using the Ollama library. So you've certainly got error checking in there as well. That's probably going to help. So yeah, so hopefully this was interesting. Sorry it's it's been a rather long video, but I thought it was an interesting thing for me to just document and get out of my head. So thanks once again for watching. Bye for now, and I will catch you in a future video.